I'm applying to be the fourth engineer at Obsidian. I'm applying to be the fourth engineer at Obsidian. I think I'd be a good fit because of the ways that I approach language and cognitive systems. I tend to say semiotic systems, but mostly I want to create systems that make it easier for us to process and relate to our thoughts. I've been developing a workbench that's meant to align with the ways developers tend to want to interact with code. Because writing can be fun, and I enjoy the linguistic side of development. I'm recording this video and I'm planning on transcribing part of it and sending this video to other companies. I'm pretty sure Obsidian is going to ask the kinds of questions that apply to other places I would want to apply, especially because they're looking for staff engineers with at least 8 years of experience. I have 15 years of experience as a developer, and recently I've been going deep with TypeScript. Going deep with TypeScript. Is that the way that I want to phrase that? It's the way that I phrased it. Cheers. The workbench I've been developing is meant to make it easier for authors from Book Talk to explore software engineering. I've been exploring this concept for a while and it actually works out pretty well. If you have a conversation with a person who's good at piecing together stories for writing books, and you talk about what you're building as an engineer, the ways you share time are going to make it easier for both of you to understand your worlds. I'm curious about how the interactions through Obsidian can make this easier. I haven't used Obsidian much specifically, but I have used Notion, and there are a lot of design decisions that I want to learn from both. So the main reason that I believe I would be a good fit for Obsidian is partially the relationships. The main reasons are the relationships that I've formed with hundreds of authors over the past few years, my passion for linguistics and language design, and my curiosity to explore the interaction design of Obsidian. As we design semiotic systems, what are the interactions that make it easier for us to navigate the symbols and share the meaning that we ascribe? One of the earlier concepts with the UI of the workbench I've been designing was to have a genre. How do I say this? To use the language I've been developing to associate physics with genre. Now it is possible to prompt for a genre and get a template for something, but what actually makes it fun to write? When authors post screenshots of their word count and they describe what they're developing over time and have conversations with other authors, what makes that experience feel worthwhile before the piece is shared, during the sharing, and afterwards? Then, in a separate thread, what makes us more likely to return to ideas we've found good? Thinking about that David Lynch quote where he was describing how it feels to lose a good idea. Something that I noticed in the application for Obsidian is that they asked about plugins that I might have developed. So I believe before I apply to Obsidian, I should try out developing a plugin for Obsidian. I should probably make an account first and start to compare how the experience of navigating the plugin development workflow, how it compares to developing extensions for VS Code or IntelliJ. And I do have work to do towards those today. So I have to do this work anyway. And I'm making this video because this is literally how I'm applying to companies. Cheers. When I was in college, I founded a student organization called Student Body for Meaningful Education. The point was to discuss the reasons why we were learning the ways that we were, because I found it confusing that we were spending so much money for classes, is what I thought. Classes that students didn't want to attend and professors didn't want to teach, it seemed. The student organization had 3 committees: discussion, connection, and creation. I had an idea to drop out of college and focus on supporting the student org while working on campus as a developer. Then I got hired in Chicago. Then the world changed and the priorities around education became... How do I say this in this video? The point of this video is that I'm looking to work for software companies that understand the reasons developers can be motivated to explore niche subjects. I believe Obsidian can provide interfaces that compel developers to explore a world. And I know, in my own experience, that exploring a world and having a reason to wonder can be very motivating. It turns out that I learned a lot from the classes that I attended, and the things that I learned weren't necessarily what I was focused on. Things like which peers I would want to have relationships with after college. That kind of relationship can't form if you aren't in class with people. Or it can, just with different. It is possible, though there are just different dynamics. And on dynamics, one of my most organically popular TikToks, I think it has around 32,000 views now. You can probably find it if you search TikTok for underwater basket weaving. In that improvised TikTok, I describe a relationship with software engineering and materials science. I want to go to grad school, and I might need a degree to go to grad school. And I'm telling the story of how much I've cared about education since I dropped out. In terms of applications, I might prioritize a company that I can have a conversation about schooling with and actually come up with a strategy for a few years. I'd love to work somewhere for a few years. The previous two companies that I worked for weren't good matches, and I worked there for under 90 days, in both instances. Some of my opinions about the tech culture have become more, and some have become less intense. But I'm excited by Obsidian because through Minecraft, there is a cultural relationship to the material. Is Obsidian a material? Are rocks materials? And I think through Minecraft, there's an opportunity to reach a lot of motivated developers. Also, I'd like to explore ways to encourage more authors to dive into Markdown. Actually, exploring more CSS, I'm curious about that. I'm curious about developing a relationship between publishing, writing, and formatting towards developing meaningful cognitive and semiotic systems. Before I submit my application to Obsidian, I want to update my main site. I want to write a blog post about Obsidian and also about my interview application process. I want to develop some plugins for Obsidian just to see how quickly I can hit the ground running. How quickly I can hit the ground running. Is that the metaphor I want to use? I'm considering my visuospatial relationship to metaphors and how I can describe my motivations. Cheers. The main reason I want to work for Obsidian, and why I believe I'm a strong fit for Obsidian, I've spent a few years on TikTok specifically learning which elements of that experience people enjoy. If you go live consistently on TikTok and try to progress through the challenges that TikTok gamifies, you start to pick up on the ways that other people navigate the same interface. And it's possible to wonder about your data and wonder about other people's data and have conversations about how you navigate the same interface. The concept that I'm presenting is a reason about product design and modern contexts for communicative engagement. I believe my career is positioned to describe motivation through Obsidian, like what do I anticipate before and after working for any particular company. We've seen exponential progress with AI, and to the best of my ability, I can describe that a linear career seems to involve Obsidian. I'm exploring the concept of career velocity as I apply to Obsidian. I believe the application process for this role would be pretty competitive, and I'm not going to expect one outcome over another, outside of wanting to learn something from the application process. If I understand where the software engineering industry is, then I will apply to this company and also grow and develop and be able to describe my experience. Something that motivates me to apply to Obsidian is I believe if I learn more about Obsidian, I will have a new skill that I can apply elsewhere. Towards the concept of curricularizing code bases, I believe an onboarding process similar to the one Obsidian has. It's probably pretty close to the concepts that I've been describing for years. And if that's not the case, then I'll be able to describe my journey through application, and maybe another company will find that interesting. But we're kind of at a point with software where we really do need engineers who are motivated to work on the products they're motivated to work on. I'm not sure if I said that correctly. We need engineers to be motivated enough to apply engineering rigor to the products they develop. So I'm primarily considering applying to roles that I believe my engineering... I want to apply to roles that build products that I believe belong in the world. Computer science is pretty much the part of philosophy that connects to engineering and math. So when you see people describe that philosophy majors have a lower unemployment rate than CS majors, love that sentence. When you see people comparing philosophy and CS in terms of unemployment, consider why they would be comparing those majors. What are you actually supposed to be able to do when you major in computer science? What are you actually supposed to be able to do when you major in philosophy? It is possible to abstract a lot of the details so more people can interact with software structures without knowing the underlying details. I would argue that makes the job more of a technician role than an engineering role. This is a difficult space to try to navigate as an industry because going to college can be pretty expensive, both in terms of time and money. It is theoretically possible to self-teach computer science, and there are courses that have been posted open-sourced. There are courses that are open like open-source software. Part of the challenge is that there isn't a discrete answer. There isn't one answer to what you're supposed to be able to accomplish with computer science or philosophy. So if you do self-teach, how do you know that you're on the path towards something useful? And you can start by writing code, and you can use AI to generate code. How do you know how much of which subject you're supposed to spend hours studying? And this is relevant because there are ironic problems that pop up in the interview process, onboarding and hiring processes. Kind of like what's the difference between interviewing someone, onboarding them, and hiring them. My argument is that the interview process, hiring process, and onboarding process are the same process. The last two companies that hired me interviewed me for a longer time than I was employed. And I did learn things that apply to my broader career, but without being able to apply those to those companies. And here is where I want to be mindful. Process optimization is pretty complex, and there are a lot of approaches. There are many approaches to optimizing processes. The main concept that I intend to represent in this video is that engineers should apply to companies where they want to work, and also consider processes that they can move forward with even if they don't get hired. I believe I would have remained employed at my previous two companies. They aren't my companies. The previous two companies that hired me, I believe I would have remained longer at if I understood their ontology before I was hired. So I'm curious about applying to Obsidian because the onboarding process might just look like learning about where we are. What do I understand about where Obsidian is in the ecosystem? How well can I learn their tool set? Can I develop a plugin easily, and do I have the design sense to consider what would be meaningful? If I am qualified for Obsidian, I'm likely going to be qualified for another role, so I believe describing that I am applying specifically to Obsidian is worthwhile. It is also worth noting for the sake of my community that this isn't the company that I mentioned earlier when I described that I was doing work to get hired by a company, or that I was doing work because I wanted to work for a company, so I was. For staff and principal engineering roles, networking becomes a lot more relevant. Two of the most important lessons I feel like I've learned since 2020. When you're performing stand-up comedy, you can tell a clever joke, but your audience probably won't laugh until the punchline. Book talk authors don't compete with each other, especially within a genre. Cheers! When I was in learning school, I saw a demo of a project using Minecraft and VR chat for education. My major in college was Learning and Education Studies with a concentration in Applied Learning Science. I call that learning school. It turns out Minecraft can be an effective learning environment for at least some subjects, for at least some learners. Many subjects and many learners, worth acknowledging not everyone. A concept that I'm considering is Obsidian Markdown as Obsidian the element in Minecraft. What if everyone has a knowledge base that serves as the bedrock? Like the knowledge base we have internalized is the bedrock, and on top of that might be Obsidian. I think that's a compelling what if, so I'm exploring that and describing through the software I develop over the next few days how that concept might be elaborated. The roles I'm applying to tend to require product design skills and engineering skills. I've been in this space for 15 years, and I'm curious how I can describe what I care about. Today, I've been improvising videos to compile and transcribe to put into application form to apply to Obsidian. And I'm describing this process because I want it to apply to other places that I would apply. Also, to have a conversation with the developers I've been developing alongside, not necessarily on the same projects, just in the same community. We are familiar with Minecraft as a game that can be shared. As a game experience. There we go. That's the language I was looking for. We're familiar with Minecraft as a development opportunity and gaming experience. So the idea of being able to share a common experience, that's on my mind. I have professional experience with Notion, and so far, I like Obsidian more. And I'm curious if I can make the onboarding process into other companies smoother with Obsidian. So as I develop this language that I've been developing for about a decade and reflect on my experiences navigating learning school, I'd like to integrate the products of companies that I would want to work for. This is pretty helpful for morale and motivation. Cheers.